KTN Prime.
Kwa hiyo reli wamekula bilioni 400, 400 billion. More than Anglo-Leasing, more than Goldenberg put together.
A government document shows Uganda and Kenya are each being charged different amounts for the same railway. Is Wetangula on to something?
What has caused all this mess is the results were not on our side.
What happened to the director of Kimilili School after KCPE results release?
I expected more children to be there, but they're not there. I hope by tomorrow they should be there.
Parents and pupils hit hard by transport crunch as schools reopen. And more bloodshed in South Sudan even as talks begin. And welcome to a new week of news here on KTN Prime. I'm Nancy Kachungura. Glad you could join me this evening. Now, first off tonight, Bungoma Senator Moses Wetangula's claim that the government has been bribed with 400 billion shillings to award a 1.2 trillion shilling new railway tender has sharply redirected the attention of Kenyans to the blueprints of the tender. Although Wetangula has not backed his accusations with facts, there still is suspicion that the new standard gauge railway project is the newest scandal in town that does not just involve the Kenyan government. Well, here's Catherine Amwando now to tell us more.
Kutoka kwa mbunge wao mwenyewe amesema na aliniambia binafsi kwamba kwa hiyo reli wamekula bilioni 400, 400 billion.
The leader of minority is yet to present facts to back this shocking accusation against the government. However, his statement has opened up doors for a thorough scrutiny of the standard gauge railway tender. In a ministerial statement to the Parliamentary Committee on Transport, Public Works and Housing, the Transport Cabinet Secretary Michael Kamau said the deal was above board since it was a government-to-government deal.
This is not a Kenyan project. This is not an East African project. This is an African project.
The estimated cost comparison that was done by Messer Gulf Consultants seems a little out of the ordinary. The estimation suggests that a railway line between Malaba to Kampala will cost the Ugandan government $9,388,400 per kilometer for the 219 kilometers of rail. In Kenya shillings at the current exchange rates, this could come to about 808 million shillings per kilometer. The cost of the same rail with the same material from the same firm will be considerably less when constructing the railway between Mombasa to Nairobi. As shown in Kamal's presentation, the cost is almost a third that amount at $2.9 million per kilometer. That is 249 million shillings per kilometer. And yet the distance between Mombasa and Nairobi is twice that between Malaba and Kampala. Uganda is paying the same amount it cost China to build the Yishang-Wonzu main line that covered about 377 kilometers, 278 of which was in tunnels or on bridges, and a few hundreds of thousands shy of what China spent on Haiku-Sanya high-speed railway. Even granted that there are a lot of factors to consider when building a railway, such as terrain, which does have a direct impact on the cost of construction, the terrain between Malaba to Kampala is no different from that of Nairobi to Malaba. In fact, Nairobi to Malaba is more mountainous. So why is Uganda paying 3 times what Kenya is paying per kilometer? At first glance, seeing that Uganda is paying 808 million shillings per kilometer of rail and Ethiopia is paying 335 million shillings per kilometer, one would think that Kenya is getting a bargain with 249 million shillings per kilometer of rail. But if Uganda's cost is inflated, then Senator Moses Wetangula and Nandi Hills Member of Parliament Alfred Keter could be onto something. Considering that according to the Railway Gazette, the standard cost of railroad per kilometer is between $1 million or 86 million shillings and $2 million or 172 million shillings. In 2009, Afghanistan began the construction of a railroad for $2.2 million per kilometer, about 189 million shillings. So who's being cheated in the standard gauge railway contract and why?
Ketera anasema kuna ufisadi. Wacha tusikie President Uhuru akisema hiyo kandarasi iko cancel, tuende tenda upya, to evaluate, kila mtu participate, tuone itagharimu pesa ngapi.
You will not stop us from developing and moving this country so that you can enrich yourself. Forget it. Kama uko na leto ya kusema, kwenda kutafuta serikali nyingine au ngojea uone yako uweze kuendelea na mambo ya upuzi. Sisi hatuna haja na hiyo.
A harsh statement coming from the president, considering that there has been an uproar over how China Roads and Bridge Corporation was awarded a direct tender and the process done in secret. According to Article 227(1) of the Constitution, when state organs or any other public entity contracts for goods or services, it should do so in accordance with a system that is fair, equitable, transparent, competitive, and cost-effective. In this case, the Constitution trumps any state-to-state agreement. Given that the funds by the Chinese government will not be able to cover the 1.2 trillion shilling project, that means you, the ordinary Kenyan, will have to pay for it in taxes and levies. Besides, the China Roads and Bridge Corporation directly picked to construct the entire railway system. It was debarred in 2009 by the World Bank for alleged illegal practices in the Philippines. And many are asking why the China Roads and Bridge Corporation and why the sudden rush to build a new standard gauge railway. Catherine Omwando, KTN.
Will those claims be proved? We'll be keeping our eye on that story for you. Right now, though, members of parliament from the Coalition for Reforms and Democracy, CORD, are now opposing President Uhuru Kenyatta's appointment of Mohamed Abduba Dida as the chair of the Constituency Development Fund Board. The MPs claim that the CDF board is not a parastatal, and the president erred in appointing a chair who they say should be vetted by parliament in any case. And as KTN's James Smart now reports, this was not the only outcry today against Uhuru's appointees.
Sasa Uhuru lete mali ingine katika Meru ya pande ile ilikuwa inasonga.
Wakati tumepigiwa debe, sasa kuna sehemu nyingine ya Kenya wanaandika wenzao, huku kwetu wanakaa bila kuandikwa.
The political waters have been fairly muddied since the president started making appointments of heads of parastatals. But the grumblings and murmuring had been confined within Jubilee, with the Deputy President Ruto's backyard seemingly unimpressed by the apparent sidelining of their people. This disquiet within Jubilee had been contained somewhat, with the President and his Deputy reading the Riot Act to members in their camp. But now,
if he has legal advisors at State House, he needs to sack them and get a new team of legal advisors.
Another war front has been opened up. CORD MPs now say the president had no business appointing the chair of the Constituency Development Board, saying the body that manages CDF is not a parastatal.
I am appealing to my brother Dida not to take up this position, because honestly, it is going to set him at war with members of parliament.
But these grumblings are going a notch higher than the president and extends to the appointee. The MPs claim that former presidential candidate Abduba Dida is being rewarded for, quote, providing comic relief in the just concluded presidential elections.
If you want to be healthy, eat when you're hungry. This timetable, I don't know who brought it. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, and then the dinner you come up with phase 1 where you take soup and mushroom, and then phase 2, phase 3. What will you do? If you want to be saved from corrupt leaders, if you want to be saved from corrupt leaders.
At the coast, there have been sharp reactions to the recent comments from a section of leaders there who were against last week's appointment of Danson Mungatana to the Kenya Ports Authority Board. Mungatana supporters want critics to shut up.
Uongozi ambao hauna chuki kwa kutupatia nafasi 5 vijana wa pwani kuwa wenye viti wa mashirika mbalimbali.
Hii si coalition government ambapo president akichagua mpaka aconsult co-principal wake.
Tutatema bigiji kwa karanga ya kuonjeshwa. Madamu nafasi tumepawa ni sisi tupiane support.
But a distant voice of grumbling that hasn't gained momentum yet and might just be on its initial stages, the Kenya Association of People Living with Disabilities is up in arms after President Uhuru Kenyatta, in his latest appointments, fired one of their own who was appointed by the outgoing president.
As people with disability, we call it inequalities. You know, when 10 people are appointed, we expect one of them to be a person with a disability.
Abel Onyango was appointed September last year to chair the Kenya Medical Laboratory Technicians and Technologists Board, but was fired and replaced by Professor Alex Chemtai, while he has still 3 years on his contract and had only served for a few months. James Smart, KTN.
So a lot of different reactions to those appointments there, but we want to hear yours on that first one. We're asking you on our big Q tonight whether you support President Uhuru's appointment of Danson Mungatana as chairman of the Kenya Ports Authority. Let us know what you think, and you can do so by sending us a text message on 22155 or tweeting us. Our handle is at KTN Kenya, or you can tweet me directly at Kachingira. Looking forward to hearing your opinion this evening. Now, did the director of a school in Western Kenya commit suicide owing to the poor performance of his school in last year's Kenya Certificate of Primary Education examinations? Well, this is the question that many people are asking after the director died under mysterious circumstances. KTN's Wilkeston Nyabwa now reports.
Nothing has been the same at Kimilili's Precious Saints Academy since the government released the Kenya Certificate of Primary Education examination results of 2013. The National Examination Council nullified the Kiswahili and English results of 17 candidates at the school, and just 2 days after that announcement, the director of the school died under unclear circumstances. Eliud Mwambu's family is still trying to piece together the events that led to his death. The former director kept his appointment with his younger brother on New Year's Day. He was, however, unusually quiet.
Kitu ambayo tuliongea na yeye, nikamuuliza habari ya Kimilili, akasema ni sawa. Alafu akaniambia kwamba anapumzika kidogo alafu anakuja nyumbani. Alifika tu na kakaa. Sasa kwa mtu dakika 5 hivi akaamka. Hata hakuwa anaongea sana, lakini tulikuwa tunaongea na yeye mambo 2-3 tukiulizana tu.
The next day, the 44-year-old director was found lying unconscious at his farm in Lukokwe, Tongaren. Family members rushed him to the hospital, where he died shortly after arrival.
Hata alibebwa tu kutoka hapo na majirani.
What has caused all this mess is the results were not on our side, and the director decided to follow up from the neck to find out what had happened. So in the process, we realized the director is no more.
It is not clear what caused the collapse and then death of the school director. However, even as family members urge locals to wait for the post-mortem examination results, a section attribute his death to the cancellation of examination results, the shock of which may have overwhelmed him. Wilkeston Nyabwa, KTN.
It was a nightmare at bus terminals in many towns today as parents taking their children back to school were caught in the public transport crunch. And as KTN's Najma Ismail reports, even those parents who did not need to travel found themselves in unprecedented queues in bookshops and shops selling school uniforms around the country. Take a look.
Tulitoka asubuhi mpaka saa hii ndio tumefika saa hii na bado mtoto anaenda mpaka Butere na tuoni magari.
Parents and students found themselves caught in the nightmare of a transport crisis as many prepared themselves for the travel back to school. Several parents and students were stranded at different bus termini, having to wait for long hours for a vehicle following the night travel ban. This was the scenario in Kisumu County.
Narudisha mtoto shuleni Butere Girls. Saa kutoka Sondu kufika hapa Kisumu imetubidi tuamka asubuhi kwa sababu magari watu walikuwa wengi na fare pia imepanda.
The situation was the same in Eldoret. faces of stranded parents and students alike scrambling for space to travel during the day. With many vehicles making only one trip a day due to the ban, transport operators say they are forced to increase the fare to compensate the loss they have incurred since the introduction of the ban.
Mimi ningeomba serikali yetu ya Kenya iweze kurudisha, yani irudishe masaa, iongeze masaa ili abiria waweze kusafiri. Sasa kama saa hii watu wamejaa hapa kwa sababu ile time ya serikali ni ndogo.
Since many Kenyans wait until the last minute to do things, books and school uniform shops were crowded as parents tried to grab the necessary school items. Many students could be seen fitting their uniforms and counter-checking on what books and stationery to buy for the new school term.
And now the problem is the school. They change every time. Like zile tulinunua last year is not the same thing.
Zote ziko expensive. Zote hakuna ile unaweza sema ni nafuu. Before I call up.
The looming teachers strike was also a concern to many parents.
Painful kwa sababu umelipa tayari, tumelipa fee kwa bangi imeenda wako nayo na tena unarudishiwa mtoto kukaa naye kwa nyumba.
Najma Ismail, KTN.
Now let's take a moment to remind you of our big Q tonight. We're asking you whether you do support the appointment of former Garton MP Danton Mungatana as chairman of the Kenya Ports Authority. As we showed you earlier, this has raised a few eyebrows and caused a few different reactions. We'd like to hear what you have to say about this. So get in touch with us. Send us an SMS on 22155 or tweet us at KTN Kenya and at Kachungira. We'll be looking forward to hearing from you. Now, as we move on, police in Ukunda today detonated an explosive device which was hurled at police officers on patrol last night. The attackers took off immediately after throwing the device at the officers, but the device failed to explode.
As the men in blue were doing their rounds last night at Ukunda in Kwale town, perhaps looking for any suspicious characters, they fell victim. An object that was assumed to be an explosive was hurled at them by unidentified persons, an incident that even area OCPD will live to tell.
If it was a real grenade, then it would have exploded after hitting a hard ground.
The ballistic experts were then called in to establish the kind of explosive it was. And upon their analysis, they concluded that it was a homemade explosive. They then decided to detonate it. As soon as they were ready, all members of the public were moved away for safety purposes. And the Kunda residents were treated to their own kind of a Hollywood scene. Few minutes after the explosion, the doubting Thomases had to have a look.
Kwa kuwa mimi ni mwananchi, nimechagua viongozi, nimeandika watu wa serikali. Kwa hivyo nataka watu wa serikali wanilinde vizuri, mimi pamoja na wananchi wengine wote tuwe na usalama hapa Kenya.
Investigations are still underway to get the suspects behind the incident. However, police have urged members of the public to be calm. Ian Wafula, KTN.
You're watching KTN Prime. Do stay with us. After this quick break, we've got many more news stories ahead, as well as business and sports, so don't go away.